So I have the wonderful honor to introduce our first speaker. Many of you know her, Sascha. Hi. So Sascha and I work together at Chef, and it's awesome. She's awesome. You should all love Sascha. She's very nice, and not at all a bratty redhead. So, Sascha, please come on up and tell us what you're going to talk about, and do that.
Testing. It is working, all right. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sascha Bates, and I work for Chef. I've lived here for several years now, and this is kind of special for me. It's kind of an honor because I've worked with a lot of you over the course of my career, and I know a whole bunch of people here, and some of you may know me from many years ago when I was kind of a grumpy person, and I might even have been something like this. I don't know. It's possible. But otherwise, I work for Chef. I also co-host with the Ship Show podcast, and I think I have a co-host here also who came all the way from California. And I also have bootstrapped the Minneapolis Infocoders group, which is where we sit around and talk about stuff that we kind of wanted to keep out of the DevOps group because we wanted that to be a little more purely culture and figuring out how to do that kind of thing. So we do tools and we talk about other things that are a little more concrete in the Infocoders group. So if you are interested in coming, we meet the first Monday of each month, and we'd love to see you. So, yeah. I used to be pretty grumpy. A lot of people were. Especially, if you're a sysadmin, you're kind of grumpy, right? A lot of stuff. So, in 2010, a lot of that changed for me. I went to go work on a project where I was actually brought in to learn Chef in 2010, back in the .8 days, before we even had a 1.0, and write automation for a larger platform project. And at the same time, the project organizer shared a lot of his core ideas with me that I later found out to be things that were part of the DevOps movement, like that he told me that the Dev and Ops teams would share responsibilities and that devs should have access to production servers and that they would help with support, and I laughed at him a lot. I was like, this is gonna be fun, and this tool looks really fun to learn, but you're crazy. That'll never happen. I mean, this was a really big company too, doing a pretty big .com rewrite. And I'd been there, and I didn't actually think that it would work out at all. And yeah, it was interesting. I thought it was hilarious, and at the time, I didn't think devs could be trusted to do anything right on servers, and that's why we didn't give them access to them. So that was me. But as I stuck around and I started reading about some of the stuff on the internet, and if any of you know Mike Nygaard, he's kind of a really persuasive, articulate kind of guy who really can kind of bring you around to his way of thinking. As I stuck around for a while and worked on this project and did a lot of the reading, I realized that I'd kind of been a victim of a system that really perpetuated the idea of conflicting incentives and priorities, and basically it encouraged divisiveness and isolation between different groups, and that's where our silos come from. And as I learned more, I eventually became a wholehearted proponent of the idea of DevOps, also with CAMs, collaboration, and better understanding through beer, which is of course a core component of DevOps. I like to refer to this as my born-again DevOps phase because I was really excited. I loved it so much. So then, when Bridget asked me if I wanted to actually talk at DevOpsDays, I was conflicted. 4 years ago, I had this really amazing personal transformation, and it was really great. But over the years, certain things happened, and I may have gotten a little more cynical over time, and it's just one of those things, right? So why is that? Maybe some of you have also kind of found DevOps and then maybe discovered that there are certain things out there that still make you cynical despite how neat the whole thing is, right? So everybody wants it. It's that new magic thing, right? It's the, people know they need it if they're gonna survive into the next decade, right? They know that it's that magic thing that's gonna help them grow, scale, compete, retain, right? Because it's the thing. Everybody wants DevOps. Unfortunately, nobody does, right? Everybody's kind of guessing, taking swings. Some are missing, some are getting it a little bit better. Some are getting there, but the trouble is that the word is being tossed around so much that most people just know that it's the thing that they need to make things go, that will magically make everything better, right? But we don't really know what that is. And so sometimes I go to a client and I feel like they're waiting for me to bust out the magic file of Pixie dust that will, like, I can sprinkle on their cloud and make it rain DevOps. And then they give me these puppy dog eyes when that never happens. And I'm like, dude, this is hard, man. This isn't just like magic. It doesn't come with Chef either, you know? I mean, we get that a lot where they're like, give us the DevOps magic. And we're like, all we got is Chef, man. And that's kind of hard. And so I figure I'm not the only one who's felt like this, right? Where you get really excited, but then you realize that maybe things aren't quite as simple as you thought they were. So, I mean, everybody wants it, right? Ops wants it. I was a web ops engineer. That was one of my very first jobs, right? There's nothing sexy about that. Nobody likes it. There's a lot of stigma attached to the fact that you're a sysadmin. But with DevOps, all of a sudden, this stuff it's new, it's exciting again. Things that have been regarded as, say, cost centers, places to be, to spend as little money as possible to keep things going, are all of a sudden being understood by the business to be valuable parts of the organization. And so this is huge for ops, for testing, for release engineering, for all of these folks who are not close enough to the business for the business to really see their business value. Like, that's really opening up. So, ops wants it. Devs love DevOps, right? They want it too. Because I get, questions from people after I've done talks, especially from devs. How can I make my ops guys use Chef? How can I make them use Puppet? How can I make them use anything, right? And they really are excited because all of a sudden they are getting repeatable infrastructure, right? They're getting, other teams are starting to use source control. They're starting to use other things that will allow them to create quickly repeatable infrastructure. Continuous delivery is now something that a dev doesn't just dream of by himself anymore. Like, everybody wants this, and it's a thing, right? So devs are excited for this too. The trouble is, people still don't know. If you think that San Francisco has the answers, you would be wrong. I had a friend who worked at a startup in San Francisco, and she was a DevOps engineer. They hired her to be one. And she spent several days diagnosing a problem, like a serious problem, with their load balancer, trying to collect some metrics and some information to figure out what was going on. And during that time, right, this is what she got from her manager. So apparently, a DevOps engineer is somebody that does something that is, the devs don't want to do. That is beneath the devs. They don't have time to do that. So really, the implication that non-coding work was beneath the devs was, it just made me rage for her for days. And especially with the hypocrisy of employing a DevOps engineer, right? What are you really getting here? They just hired somebody that was going to do everything that the devs didn't want to do. But then they called it a DevOps engineer, which is the part that really kind of bugs me. So anyway, she quit and got a job where she's much happier. I have no idea if she's a DevOps engineer there or not, but she's definitely much happier. So recruiters don't know either, right? I haven't been looking for work in years, but I trawl job descriptions for fun, and I like to kind of guess and see what I might guess would be what they're really saying behind the job description. So, like, I see this one a lot. Things citing DevOps engineer, but you get there and it's really just kind of production support, and then everybody's sad and a little bitter, right? It's a problem. Hiring managers don't really know either. What does this mean? You should know 5 different programming languages and DevOps. You should have magic DevOps. What does that mean? Everything. You should know how to be a sysadmin. You should be a release engineer. You should know how to collaborate with people. What exactly does that mean? I mean, you should have 5 different programming languages and DevOps. I mean, so like after reading this kind of stuff, I have to go like hug a kitten or something. Because I'm so sad and kind of just discouraged. So like, you know who really wants DevOps? The business is starting to really want DevOps, and this is cool for all of us. Because until the business wants this stuff, it doesn't matter. Because we can sit around and try to do it ourselves, but until they're on board with all of the different incentives that we need, right? We need to have things like shared incentives, shared priorities, and things like that. We're never gonna get there. And so it's really cool that the business wants this. They're getting the message that it can save them from things, right? But they don't really know what they want, and they don't know how to get it. And do you know where that message is coming from? DevOps tools. Marketing from companies trying to hop on the DevOps bandwagon with folks who don't really understand their audience. That's us, a lot of the time. And so they don't know how to talk to us in a way that doesn't make us roll our eyes a lot of the time. I spend some time when I get a chance, or if I actually, can get a marketing person to sit still long enough to try and explain to them why a lot of the times what they're using as far as marketing materials, terminology, is not working with us. But it's a struggle. Toolmakers want you to think that they know about DevOps. Some of them may have folks who actually do understand, but a lot of times I feel like the marketing gets in the way of the message of what's really going on. And so, like, the first one is one that I saw that really upset me. Designed by DevOps. I don't know what that means. And it was horrible, because it was actually on a site that was a collaborator of somebody that I really liked. And it was distressing for me to see that. So, I mean, the other one is just like the first message, this first line in a blog post of something that I saw online. So really, what really did me in with the cynical and the getting tired of it all was the recruiters and the tool marketing and things like that. So I finally went through and I scrubbed every last little bit of DevOps from my LinkedIn profile, because I just was so tired of it. I didn't want anybody to associate it with me, even though I still really care a lot about the message and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to tell that story a lot, because I want people who have kind of started in on this journey to really know that if you are getting there, it's okay. You're not alone. There's a lot of conflicting messages out there, and this is hard stuff. I mean, if you feel like there are mixed messages, you're right. Part of that mixed message is us, right? Even though I'm reluctant to use the word, mostly because I'm afraid of being eaten alive by wild recruiters, I still love it. Like, I love a lot of the stuff about DevOps, and the transformation for me was a really big deal, right? Like, I really did used to be somebody who was grumpy, somebody who couldn't see outside of my own sphere of influence, my own sphere of life, and was very judgmental about other folks. And the transformation helped me with a lot of that. It helped me with my empathy. It helped me with understanding what other people wanted and needed and their motivations. So it's still really important, right? And it's going to be different for all of us when we try to go in and start to try and implement this stuff. So, I mean, it's going to be different, but it's also going to be, there will be common themes. There's going to be initiatives that run through the entire movement that are very similar, despite the fact that we're all going to be a little bit different with how we implement, depending on, a lot of times, the size of your organization and the goals that you have to accomplish, right? So, with that said, while I can get a little cynical about stuff, the message beyond the marketing is getting out there, and people are starting to hear it, people are starting to learn about it, and I feel like the marketing messages are no longer obscuring what we're really trying to find out and get to with this. So many of you are here because you're trying to bring change to your organization, and that is really awesome. I mean, I just generally leave when I don't like things. But people who actually stick around and try to bring some of this stuff to their organization, that is a really big deal. It's important, and it's extremely hard. And I really applaud that you're trying to do that. So A lot of you, maybe you've read the Phoenix Project, maybe you started to get out to some meetups, maybe you've been to Velocity, maybe you've been to other DevOps days. You're getting the message, right? It's not about your tools. It's about how you bring that kind of change to your organization, how you start to kind of bring people together to really make things different for yourself and the people around you. Some of the themes that we're going to talk about this week that I think you're going to see, these are pretty common, but I think we're going to have some good talks on them this week. Empathy, that's a big one that a lot of us have trouble with. I did. I still do. Trust. Trust is huge in DevOps, right? Because you can't collaborate and you can't give people production access to things and trust them to not break things unless there is that. And then there's the idea of reflection. And what I mean about reflection is the idea that your tools and processes are a reflection of your cultural choices. And that's really, that's why the culture part has to come first, and then the tools flow through that. So for me, I still love DevOps. When I first met it, I was really gung-ho. I was fired up. I was excited to tell everyone about it. Super excited. But I made mistakes, right? Because I was born again and you get really excited. Sometimes you don't always hear other people. Sometimes you don't always see things. So besides all the usual things we talk about with DevOps, right? This is the beer, the silos, and the Jenkins, right? I want to talk briefly about another theme that's really important to me that I feel we don't always think about and can really, I feel, hamper your implementation or your efforts to bring some of this to your own organization. And that's the idea of inclusiveness. Because we want to be special, right? Everybody wants to be special. But that sometimes leads to making yourself feel special by making somebody else feel less good. And there are a lot of different ways that this can manifest. And with a lot of the things that we're doing that are cool, we're doing a lot of stuff with cool tools, cool things. There are a lot of opportunities to create imbalances that make things less nice for some people around you. So, I mean, things like Apple products, right? Open source software. These are some of the things. Self-service virtual infrastructure, PaaSes, all of these things are things that we're bringing in that they're cool to work on. They're really cool to use. And not everybody can always do it. I don't like to say this very much, but I feel like it bears saying here. If you are excluding people actively, you're doing it wrong. I'm very careful about saying things like that. But I really feel like you can't have a good collaborative organization unless everybody gets a lot of the same kinds of consideration. So I've seen a lot of different kinds of exclusions over the years since I started this. The stuff that you're doing, it's not just for your smartest people. It's not just for your permanent employees. It's not just for your senior architects. It's not just for your Mac users, right? When you're attempting to create an inclusive atmosphere, if you're not careful, what you can end up with is kind of a caste system where some people have nice things and other people have much less nice things, and that creates a real layer of resentment that can hinder you for a long time. I'm pretty sure a lot of people here have seen this or experienced this, right? A lot of places are using Macs now because it's so hard to program Ruby on a Windows box, right? I mean, I checked my Windows box in 2011, and I regretted it I never regretted it, but I missed it for a while. And now I use Macs because I can program on them more easily. They're just more comfortable, especially if you're a Unix or a Linux sysadmin. The translation from a Mac to a Linux box is much easier than the one between that and Windows. So a lot of people are getting Macs, but they're expensive, and most places don't have purchase agreements the way they do with HP, Dell, or IBM, or whoever you guys get your 8 million laptops from that you get every year. So only the special people get Macs, right? So this creates all kinds of things. There's the caste system, right? So special people get Macs, people who are cool, people who are on cool projects, who have a lot of money, right? These are all the kinds of people who get Macs. this creates the status rift between Macs and Windows users. Not only are Macs nicer, but they don't come loaded with all the corporate malware that makes you not able to work, right? So this is huge. A lot of resentment there, and for a lot of different reasons, right? So not only are they a status symbol, but teams that are supporting tools tend to focus on the tools that they're making for themselves first. So if your teams are mostly Mac users, but also trying to work with Windows users, a lot of times the things that they're doing aren't going to work nearly as well on the Windows laptops because they don't have any and they don't care as much. It's hard to remember sometimes that you need that. So as an example, I spent several months at a place where a lot of the teams did have Macs. Like a large majority of the teams had Macs. There was a lot of money for this project. It was pretty awesome. But the production support team had Windows boxes. So you had ops, tools, and devs all working on Macs for the most part, except the release engineers, because they only got Windows boxes too. And then you had the production support team, who didn't really have a lot of the same tools, and they had all of that productivity-killing malware that kept you from actually getting anything done on the Windows boxes. And not only did this make it difficult for them to get work done, it made it difficult for other people to get work done too, because they were on constant walk-up with the tools, with the apps people, with the devs, because they couldn't solve their own problems half of the time with the tool set that they had. So this created productivity issues for everyone. This is important. And it made them feel resentful. They were less privileged, right? So a lot of stuff going on there. This is something that I've actually heard at a couple of different places. This sentiment, these exact words. So the new awesome of self-service infrastructure, it's really cold in here. Sorry, guys. I'm like right under a vent, I think. The new infrastructure that we have, where we can self-service ourselves with either AWS or internal PaaSes or OpenStack, it's awesome, right? For 5 minutes. Like, now devs get shit. I promised Brian Barry I wouldn't swear, because he's got his daughter watching. Sorry, Brian. Now you get stuff in 5 minutes instead of a month, right? You get your server right now, but it's empty. For years, we've been given devs servers that are fully curated versions of what they need to run their app. Like, all they have to do is drop their WAR file in and everything works. And if it doesn't, we help them fix it, right? So it's really awesome that they got that completely empty server in 5 minutes, but now they don't know what to do with it. And what I have seen at places is that there's a lot of judgment around the fact that they don't know how to cope with the fact that they don't have fully curated servers anymore. This is a large learning curve for folks who spend their lives in a macrocosm of, a microcosm of writing code around one thing that's about this big, right? And it's their whole world. And when their servers don't work, that is a huge time waste to them. It's a time suck, because that's not what they're supposed to be focusing on. So it was super cool at first, and now it's not so much for them anymore. And the idea that they are dumb because they can't cope with our new tools that don't have a lot of user-friendliness around them, it's a problem. This is going to do the same kind of thing. It's going to create that kind of rift between people where people who know how to do this stuff judge, even though it's their job to know how to do this stuff. And other people really do need to learn it, but the fact that they don't know it shouldn't be a problem, right? So if you're bringing new tools into the organization, you have to make sure that you have process or people around them that can help people learn them, right? So if you're bringing in Chef, if you're bringing in Puppet, if you're bringing in a PaaS, right? Chef is like all of my examples. I'm sorry. I use it all the time. You can't just be like, go do stuff with this stuff. It'll be awesome, right? Because nobody's going to know how. And honestly, a lot of them just want to write code. And the fact that they now have to figure out how to write this other stuff before they can write their code is just going to make them mad. And they're going to do a really bad job with it, and it probably won't even work. So having people who are experts, or at least designed to own the use of these tools and to share or to be a resource for people who are going to be using them, it's really important, right? You want to be able to give out infrastructure around your tools, whether that's cookbooks or Puppet manifests or ease of use like UI scripts around your paths, right? You want to be able to give people these things so that they're not constantly reinventing that really crappy wheel, right? You want to give them a beautiful wheel because you know how to do it better already. That's really important. This is the last thing I want to talk about. This was something that was a problem for me, and I didn't know it for a long time. This was part of I really feel like it's part of the born again complex, where you get really excited about something and you feel like you know everything that's important and you want to tell everyone about it because it's awesome, right? But that's not true. Most of us walk around thinking that we are right about everything and that everybody else will just need to, if they disagree, they're just being difficult or they don't know any better, right? So I approached every problem in person after the transformation with the idea that I was bringing them the light and that they were just, either being difficult or ignorant. And as soon as I told them everything that I knew, they would completely agree with me because it was obvious. And that really irritates people. Did you know that? I learned that the hard way, a couple of different ways. And one of it actually was with the podcast, where we talked about DevOps, and I made a lot of assumptions about what people thought that were not at all what other people thought. And it eventually made us all become a lot closer, but it resulted in a really long email thread and never actually having the podcast that we were going to talk about because it turned out to be a little too contentious. But this really, to me, is one of the biggest things, is that because there's so many different answers and so many different ways to go about what we're doing, it's really important to remember that other people are smart too, even though you feel like you have a lot of the answers. And especially if you've read the Phoenix Project, you're right there, right? You're right there. And it's important to remember that we all have different ideas on how we want to do this. And sometimes other people are going to have different ideas that may actually end up being better than the ones that you have. So it's important to listen when you're trying to get all of this stuff done. So moving past the ideas that I had the answers to all things DevOps was really helpful for me. And working through some of the cultural growing pains that I did with some of the companies that I've been with the last few years, because I'm a consultant, I don't know if I said that or not, but so I go in and out of a lot of different places. It helped me get a really good feel for, a really laid back feel for the essence of DevOps. I really feel like it did. And I try to bring this more relaxed attitude to a lot of the places that I go into now. I rarely use the word DevOps. I don't preach. Mostly I try to be an example, whether it's, I really do believe that people need access to stuff, that people can be trusted for things, right? In almost all of our professions, nobody's gonna die if we have a site outage. It's the truth. I had a manager, actually. I don't know if anybody here actually would remember this, but she used to be like, dude, it's just socks and underwear. Small children aren't gonna die. I mean, it was really important to keep that perspective, right? Because through those kinds of things, we all get better at things. We grow. We get more understanding of how stuff works, and it's okay sometimes to make mistakes. And so that's kind of where I've ended up, is that I don't use the word so much anymore. I still love it a lot. It means a lot to me, and the movement means a lot to me. And the fact that we're all here this week it's just awesome as far as I'm concerned. And I'm super excited to talk to everyone when I'm done here and have beer. It's the end. questions? Bridget wants me to know if you guys want to ask questions.
We will bring you the mic if you would like to ask a question. Raise your hand. We may have to throw you a mic if you're up there.
I'll be drinking beer later, though, so you can ask them too.
You talked about 2 different operating systems, and you've been in multiple places, you say. So have you seen any adoption of Linux at all?
Adoption of Linux
as far as
laptop
workstations?
work, for personal workstations? Some people do. And I've seen folks who actually just dump it right on top of their laptop and ignore the fact that they have Windows there at all. If they have the power to do that. That really helps them a lot with their development. And I do see, actually I've been at a place right now, a lot of places actually combine a Linux VM with their Windows stuff so that they can actually run certain things that are easier to run inside the Linux VM as opposed to out in Windows. So the folks that I'm working with, they do a lot of their chef work in that VM, although we've been working through trying to get Test Kitchen and stuff like that running on the Windows side so that they're not dependent on it. But I haven't talked to too many folks who are running straight Linux. It's still pretty rare, I think.
So if you don't like to use the word DevOps to describe the idea or the philosophy to people, what do you use?
Oh, it's not that I don't like to use it, it's that I just don't feel, it feels to me like when I start going DevOps this and DevOps that at clients, I feel preachy. So I generally just don't talk about it too much, and I'll be like, oh, you have X problem? Well, that's a culture problem, right? That's a people problem. We're not gonna fix it by writing these 30 lines of code. Like I had this conversation about 30 times over the past month because they were sure that if I wrote them these 30 lines of code, all of their problems would be magically solved. And I'm like, well, I can write you these 30 lines of code, but if nobody uses them, it's still not gonna be solving your problem. So you still have to solve the fact that people are doing this thing over and over and over and over and over again in their code. We can give them the means to actually stop doing that, but you are gonna have to educate them and enforce this until it becomes part of process. That's a people problem. And so I talk a lot about culture problems, people issues, and getting people to do what you want them to do, because that's really, or getting them to work together to figure things out, because that's really what a lot of this is. It's not really, and using the word DevOps really can turn people off too, especially if they've been bombarded by the wrong things.
Hey,
Hi, Jason.
hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah?
Is it coming? Okay. You'd mentioned the idea of having I'll say a team, but I don't know if you necessarily meant a team of experts, a resource, a pool to be able to go through and have people that can represent use cases and how to use the different tools or how to implement the patterns and so forth. I'm wondering about your perspective on the longevity of having, whether it be self-organized or a formal team that provides that, or if it's establish the practice and then they kind of dissolve back into general population, so to speak.
I think it depends on the size of your organization and the rate that you're bringing people into using this stuff. I mean, a lot of times what you end up with are tools teams that are, or infrastructure teams that are not focused on production stuff. They are development tools teams, or they are development infrastructure, things like that. There are other folks who are actually interested in production metrics, stability, all of those things that like you go to Monitorama for, or you go to Velocity for. And then you end up with this kind of middle area team where, this is one of my other favorite things to say, that dev is production for developers. You know, dev is production for an awful lot of people a lot of the time. And you end up with this whole other infrastructure team that kind of is built around the idea that the devs and like release engineering, your continuous delivery infrastructure, all of these things that you're trying to get to need a dedicated team. And it needs to be, whether or not you have 1 or 2 people on those teams who are, you know, knowledgeable about different things, or whether you have a lot of small teams, or whether you have some kind of loose collaboration between a lot of different development teams. I mean, it's really what works for you as far as structure, but I would imagine that you would always have some sort of team devoted to the stability and the longevity of that infrastructure, because I think it's just gonna grow, really. I mean, so the one that I work with a lot is Chef, right? And if you don't provide working Chef cookbooks to developers, they're going to write really bad ones in an effort to get it done while they write their Java code. So maybe you don't always need to have a Chef expert on the team, but you do need some people around who can answer questions and be SMEs and things like that really understand that. But on the other hand, you also hope that that information will eventually permeate out into the people who are using things. But everything is still pretty young, so there hasn't been a lot of that yet.
All right, we have time for one more question.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about how like we react to the word, and in some ways I've kind of gone on this thing lately where I'm thinking that like those of us who hate the word, now we're being exclusive of the people who want to use the word.
You know,
So-
I took my picture of Hipster Cat out of here. But because I felt like it was the wrong message, because I don't want to be like, we're hipster DevOps, right? And that's kind of like where I feel like some of us are getting. And I don't actually, that's why I say I don't want to actively not use the word or hate it or dislike it. And it's why I try not to be too cynical like on Twitter and stuff like that, because I feel like it's very hipster to do that now. You know, the I did it before it was cool thing, and now you're all stupid. I really hate that whole idea. It's just that I try to be careful about using it so that people don't feel preached at or lectured.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sascha. Can everybody give it up for Sascha?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.